The MC's voice echoed. And now, the father-daughter dance. Ashley and William stepped into the spotlight, the crowd parting around them.
I know some of you think blood makes family, but my father only has one real daughter.
Charlotte watched with a thin smile, already savoring the moment. Ashley leaned close to the mic, her voice dripping with false sweetness.
That woman in the back, she didn't earn the title.
William nodded, his eyes never leaving the bride at the very back. Linda sat rigid in her full navy dress uniform, a single empty chair beside her.
I didn't earn the title. I've been serving this country for 15 years, and I've earned everything that's pinned to this chest.
Her white-gloved hand clenched around the small velvet box in her lap, its contents older than this wedding. The weight of the velvet box pulled Linda back 8 years, to a dim hospital room.
My mother's last breath, her fingers cold against mine. This is for my real daughter.
The memory shattered as a shadow fell over her table. Charlotte's perfume arrived before she did.
So you finally decided to show your face. I was starting to think the Navy had you scrubbing decks somewhere. And that uniform, honestly, Linda, it's a wedding, not a funeral. A little much, don't you think?
Every ribbon on this chest was earned in places you'd never survive. But you wouldn't understand that.
Linda's jaw locked. Her white-gloved hand remained motionless on the ring box, betraying nothing.
Still clutching that old ring, I see. Your mother had such sentimental notions. Too bad they died with her.
The ring box seemed to pulse under her fingers, a small heartbeat from the past. On the dance floor, Ashley twirled in her father's arms, laughing. William never glanced back. Linda stood, chairs scraping, and wove through the tables without a glance back. On the terrace, the night was cool. She leaned against the stone balustrade, breathing deeply. She opened the velvet box, the gold band, catching the distant city lights.
You are stronger than they know. Her mother's words, a whisper from the grave.
Across the street, a dark van sat under a dead streetlight, a vehicle she hadn't noticed before. Linda's body went still, the way it did before a mission. Her fingers tightened on the ring. Without lowering her gaze, she pulled out her phone and typed a short, coded message. The van's engine coughed once, then went silent. A sliver of movement behind tinted glass. She pressed send, then slipped the device back into her pocket, her expression unreadable. Linda didn't move. The ring was back in the box, and the ballroom chandelier glowed through the glass. Linda slipped back inside, her seat still empty, the box heavy in her pocket. A few guests glanced her way, then quickly looked past her. She was invisible.
I want to raise a glass to my real family, Mom, Dad, and my new husband. You've shown me what love means.
Charlotte clinked her glass against William's, a smug glance cutting across the room toward Linda. William lifted his glass, but his eyes were distant, fixed on the bride.
Real family. A title I never had a chance to earn.
The reception limped on, laughter hollow, candles burning low. Linda's phone buzzed against her thigh. She glanced down, a single word. Acknowledged. She slid the phone back into her pocket. Her hand found the ring box, its edges worn smooth. The party would end. The van still waited outside, and Linda remained seated, waiting. The band started a slow waltz, and couples drifted back onto the dance floor. William led Charlotte out, his hand firm on her waist, her head resting against his shoulder as they swayed.
My father's voice came back. My small feet on his, the scratch of a record. I'll dance at your wedding, sweetheart. That promise died with my mother. Tonight, he danced with someone else's daughter.
Linda blinked hard, forcing the memory down. Her gloved hand pressed the ring box flat against her thigh. A young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve and pointed at Linda's uniformed chest. He asked what the fish pin meant, his voice carrying across the table.
I served. That's all you need to know.
The mother yanked him back, her face pinched like she'd smelled something rotten. She whispered something in his ear, and the boy's curiosity vanished. He never looked again. Hours slipped by. The cake was wheeled out, a towering white monument.
To William and Charlotte, my parents by love, not just by blood. You've always been there. And to the rest, family is chosen. Not all of us were lucky enough to be born into it.
Linda's gloved hand tightened on the ring box, until the edge bit into her palm.
Chosen. You chose to erase me.
She pushed back her chair and stood, needing to move before the rage cracked her open. She cut toward the corridor leading to the restrooms, past a side exit. Through the glass, two men in dark suits stood motionless. And the coiled earpieces, she knew those.
That's not wedding security. That's federal. Why, here?
She didn't break stride, but her pulse hammered. Everything she'd sensed all night was accelerating. Linda retraced her steps and slid back into her chair, her spine as straight as a mast. She kept her eyes on the side door, but the two men remained outside, motionless as statues. The antique clock on the wall ticked to 11:30. The reception was fading, but not fast enough. A waiter offered champagne. She shook her head once, and he retreated. Then a shadow fell over her. William. His face was hard, his voice low.
Ashley's day has been perfect. Don't you dare do anything to ruin it.
He didn't see the velvet box near her hand, didn't care to look.
I wouldn't dream of it, Dad.
William turned on his heel and walked away, already dismissing her from his mind. For one fleeting instant, Linda's composure cracked, a quiver in her lip, a blink that came too slowly. Linda smoothed her composure back into granite, but a whisper surfaced. Her mother's voice, calm and relentless.
You are enough. You have always been enough.
The ballroom had hollowed out. Most guests were gone, and the waitstaff cleared glasses like ghosts. The clock's hands read 11:45. Her cap lay untouched on the table, the velvet box near her fingertips. Through the windows, two sharp beams cut the darkness. A black SUV had pulled up to the curb outside. The two agents outside stiffened. One pressed his earpiece, and the other reached inside his jacket. Linda's phone vibrated against her thigh, a military pulse, not a social buzz. She glanced down. The message was only 4 words: asset arriving. Stand by.
She didn't know who, but she'd followed this protocol a dozen times before.
Her fingers closed around the ring box, her pulse steady. The real story was about to walk through that door. At 11:47 p.m., the rear doors slammed wide, and 4 Secret Service agents sliced into the room. The remaining guests froze mid-sentence, their forks suspended, champagne glasses trembling. Charlotte's champagne glass slipped in her grip, a thin stream of gold spilling down her wrist as her smirk collapsed.
What is happening? Who are they?
Then he appeared. The Vice President of the United States, tall and silver-haired, walking with unshakable calm. His gaze swept past the head table, across the empty dance floor, searching. It stopped on the back table, where Linda sat in her navy dress blues, utterly alone. Linda rose to her feet, the scrape of her chair loud in the silence, and stood at full attention.
She knew that face from 100 secure briefings. This was not a coincidence.
He started walking directly toward her, agents parting the crowd, and every eye followed. The vice president halted directly before Linda. He extended his hand, palm up.
Trident 8. Would you grant me a dance?
Linda recognized her classified call sign. She inclined her head once and laid her white-gloved hand in his. Without a word, she placed her hand in his, and together they walked to the center of the dance floor. The bandleader raised a trembling baton. A waltz stumbled to life, delicate in the hush. Charlotte's glass had stopped dripping. Her face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending disbelief. William stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing with no sound, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were telling him. Ashley's expression curdled from shock into something jagged, pure, unadulterated envy.
I told you I'd find a way to thank you, Commander.
One tear slipped free. For the first time all night, Lieutenant Commander Linda's iron composure cracked. The waltz slowed to a final note. The Vice President released Linda's hand, but his gaze never left her face. He gestured to the microphone stand at the edge of the dance floor, and an agent placed it in his hand. Linda stood beside him, her back iron straight, the tear still glistening but her composure fully restored.
2 years ago, my daughter's school was taken hostage overseas. Most of you never heard about it. This woman here, Lieutenant Commander Linda, led the rescue. She went in personally, in total darkness, with a four-man team, and she brought out every single child alive.
A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom, sharper than the chandelier's glare. Charlotte's face drained to the color of bone, her hand gripping the table as if the floor had tilted. William stared at Linda, his eyes wide as though seeing her for the first time in 40 years. Ashley's jaw tightened. Her wedding day had just been eclipsed by a truth she could never claim.
For that mission, she was awarded the Silent Service Medal, one of the Navy's highest honors. But what most don't know, what this family doesn't know, is that her work didn't end there. Tonight, thanks to her vigilance, a far greater tragedy was averted, right here. There was a plot against this wedding. The intelligence she provided allowed us to stop it in time.
The ballroom erupted, gasps, dropped glasses, a woman's sharp cry. William's face crumpled, ill with a dawning horror that had nothing to do with the plot itself. Linda remained still, but a tremor passed through her white-gloved hand, the only outward sign of what she'd carried.
The people in this room owe her their lives.
William took one jerking step forward, his hand reaching toward Linda, his mouth forming a word that wouldn't come. Linda's eyes met his, and for a heartbeat, the distance between them was a chasm no metal could bridge. William's cracked voice finally broke the silence, raw and foreign to his own ears.
Linda, is this true? Everything he said?
The vice president gave the slightest nod, and the agent blocking the path stepped aside. William stumbled forward, closer than he'd been to his own daughter all night.
You never asked what I did. You only saw what you wanted to see. The invisible daughter.
William's eyes fell, not to her face, but to the ribbons on her chest, the gold dolphins he'd never asked about. His hand rose, trembling toward the medals, then stopped in midair, as if an invisible wall blocked him. Linda's expression didn't soften, but the pulse at her throat beat a war drum. The velvet box pressed into her side through the uniform, a secret she hadn't surrendered. Neither spoke. The chandelier light caught the tear tracks on William's face, and the silence became answer enough. The vice president's voice cut through the silence, calm and unyielding.
That Silent Service Medal your daughter earned. It saved more than my child. That mission dismantled the very cell that planned this attack tonight. The intelligence she sent from this very wedding was the final piece, the reason we stopped it. She is the only reason you are standing here tonight.
William stumbled backward, his legs giving way as if the floor had liquefied. Tears welled and spilled unchecked down his face. He didn't even try to wipe them. Linda's gaze dropped, her hand moving slowly to the pocket at her hip. The velvet box still pressed warm against her side, its contents untouched. Her fingers traced the box's worn edges. A decision was forming, sharp, final, inevitable. Linda raised her eyes from the pocket, sweeping across the frozen faces. Charlotte's disbelief, Ashley's fury, William's tears.
Mom gave me this ring for her real daughter.
She drew the velvet box from her pocket and held it in her open palm for all to see.
Linda, please.
But I was never that to you. Was I?
She snapped open the box, and the gold ring caught the chandelier's light like a tiny, unforgiving star. Ashley's eyes widened. She recognized the heirloom, the ring Linda's mother had died giving. Charlotte's mouth opened, but the words shriveled in her throat. For once, she had nothing.
15 years I've carried this. You never once asked what it meant.
No one moved. The ring lay exposed, a verdict waiting to be pronounced.
You chose Ashley. She gets the ring. It's what you always wanted, isn't it?
She lifted the ring from its bed of velvet and pressed it into William's trembling palm. He tried to pull away, a broken murmur of protest on his lips, but she held firm. Linda folded his fingers over the ring, one by one, sealing her decision in his skin.
Take it. Give it to your real daughter.
Ashley's face crumpled. For the first time, horror replaced the triumph. Linda turned to the vice president, her voice as steady as a ship's compass.
I think I've danced enough. Would you escort me out?
The vice president inclined his head and extended his arm without a word. Linda laid her gloved hand on his sleeve, and together they took the first step toward the door. Without a word, Secret Service agents slipped into a tight escort, sealing Linda and the vice president in a moving fortress.
Linda, wait.
An agent thrust out an arm, a wall of black wool, and Charlotte froze mid-lunge, her cry swallowed by the silence. Ashley darted forward, her white gown snagging, but the sight of Linda's unbroken stride stopped her cold. William crumpled into a chair, the ring clutched against his heaving chest, his sobs the only sound. Linda walked on, her back a rigid line, her peaked cap forgotten on the empty table. The ballroom doors swung wide, and the night air rushed in, cool and clean. She did not look back. Not at William, not at the ring, not at the ring, not at the family she'd never been allowed to claim. Then the heavy doors closed behind her, with a resonant thud, and the family was left with the ruin. William stared at the ring in his palm, a last, jagged piece of the daughter he'd finally seen too late. Outside, the black motorcade idled under a halo of security lights, engines a low purr. The vice president opened the door himself and stepped aside. Linda paused on the curb, her upturned face drinking in the cool October dark. She filled her lungs with night air that tasted of nothing. No champagne, no expectation, no weight. Then she ducked into the leather interior, the VP following in a single fluid motion. The door sealed with a hushed click, shutting out the noise of the ruined reception. The vice president said nothing, only fixed his eyes on the forward window, granting her the gift of silence. Linda's composure held, calm, pale, unreadable. But then one tear slipped free.
She did not wipe it away. It was the first honest thing her body had done all night.
The motorcade pulled away smoothly into the dark corridor of palms, leaving only the echo of a waltz behind. The motorcade rolled through the gates, the venue's glow shrinking to a faint smudge in the tinted glass. Linda caught her own reflection in the window. The uniform, the tear track, the woman who had just amputated her past. She turned to the man beside her, the highest-ranking civilian she'd ever have at her back.
Thank you, sir, for the dance, for making them see.
The country owes you more than a dance, Commander, but it's a start.
A faint smile touched her lips, the first real one in so long she almost didn't recognize it. The car accelerated on the open road, city lights streaking past like memories too small to hold. Linda said nothing else, and the vice president did not push her to speak. The silence was its own kind of honor. She rested her bare right hand on the seat, the glove long discarded, and stared at the empty space where a ring had been. The motorcade pressed on into the night, heading nowhere that required her to be invisible. The ballroom had emptied. Only the family remained, William in the chair, ring in hand, Charlotte still, Ashley at the door. The chandelier's glow sank to a dull amber, as if the room itself was closing.
She was always my real daughter.
Charlotte's lips parted, but the air in her throat refused to become a word. Ashley turned from the door, her white gown now just a ghost in the dark. William stared at the ring, its gold still warm from Linda's fingers. A tear splashed onto his knuckle, but he didn't feel it. The ring caught the last gleam of the chandelier before it finally gave out. The silence swelled, a presence heavier than the music had ever been. Then the final lamp died, and they were alone with the weight of a daughter they'd never known. Inside the motorcade, Linda turned from the window and looked down at her right hand, still sheathed in white. She peeled the glove off, finger by finger, until it lay limp in her lap. Her bare left hand rested on her thigh, pale and unadorned. She stared at the empty finger, where a wedding band might one day sit, but only if she chose it. Then she lifted the same hand and pressed it flat against the cool glass. She held it there for 3 heartbeats, as if leaving a print for the past to remember. Then her hand fell away, returning to her lap, empty and weightless. She closed her eyes and her face settled into a stillness that wasn't a mask. It was the face of a woman who had buried her ghosts on that dance floor and left the shovel behind. The city lights washed over her, and slowly, gently, the screen faded to black. The blackness of Linda's closed eyes gave way to one final image. The motorcade already a quarter mile down the palm-lined road. 2 red taillights, small as dying embers, floated farther and farther and farther away through the corridor of silhouetted palms. They dwindled to pinpoint sparks, then vanished altogether, swallowed by the dark. The camera held on the empty avenue, an unbroken silence stretching wide. Then, In the center of the black screen, a line of clean white letters appeared. It read, "Some families are chosen." The words glowed for a long moment, as if daring the dark to argue. Then, they, too, dissolved into the dark, and the screen went black for the final time. Yet even in that blackness, the echo of a waltz still whispered, and somewhere, Linda was finally free. End.